The Lighthouse Secret. By Jonah Verrick. Chapter 1, Ashford Bay. Section 1, Arrival. The sea keeps its own clock. You can hear it in the slow grind of waves on the breakwater and the gulls cutting the fog like poorly sharpened knives. Ashford Bay rose out of a wet grey noon with the caution of a wounded animal, all shingles and salt and peering windows. The lighthouse stood off the point, a white bone in the throat of the Atlantic, its lamp shut for daylight but still in command. The bus coughed me onto the square and rattled away like it was glad to be rid of me. I stood with my valise and my hat tilted against the damp and let the place find me. Coastal towns size you up. They want to know what kind of trouble you brought in your coat pocket and whether it floats. A boy with ink on his fingers and a cap tugged low paced the curb, hawking to the sea air more than to people. Chronicle. Festival opened Saturday. Fisherman found on the rocks. Chronicle. His voice had the brittle cheer of a bell that's been rung too long. I gave him a nickel and the kind of look that asks for change without asking. He handed me the paper and a little respect. New in town, mister. Passing through. The lie tasted like last night's coffee. Festival's real swell, he said. Boats all lit up. Music. If the fog lets loose. If it doesn't. He shrugged. Then the lighthouse does the singing. He hooked a thumb at the point, where the tower dragged a pale shadow across the haze. You staying at the Seaward? I might be. Tell Mr. Greeley Jimmy sent you. He likes my name in other people's mouths. Jimmy what? Jimmy. He tipped his cap, as if the second name was a secret the town hadn't decided to trust me with yet. Try the chowder at Mick's. Best you'll get unless you like your fish arguing. He loped off, calling his headlines to the gulls. I opened the Chronicle under the awning of a hardware store that smelled like twine and machine oil. The headline didn't shout. It didn't need to. Man found near Devil's Teeth. There was a photograph printed out of too much night and too little light. Rocks like broken morals under a wash of foam. No face. No name. Just the word local offered like a prayer. The byline belonged to someone who enjoyed their job too much. I folded the paper. The square was a ring of narrow storefronts with the church steeple shouldering the fog at one end and the dock snoring under it at the other. A string of flags drooped across the street, left over from last year if you asked me. The Caldwell mansion loomed on the hill above town, a big house pretending it wasn't watching. The library was a brick block with a brass clock halfway to the roof and the look of a place that knew everyone's sins in alphabetical order. War trains you to read a landscape. This one said money came in on the tide and secrets went out with it. I shifted the valise to my other hand and started for the Seaward Hotel. The streets were cobbled with stones that remembered better boots than mine. Inside the lobby the air was warm and tired. Red carpet older than the clerk. He was a needle of a man with hair parted like a razor cut and a tie that kept too much company with itself. Afternoon. He had the kind of voice that could deny you things politely. Welcome to the Seaward. Harold Greeley, manager. Jonathan Reed, I said. The name still surprised me sometimes, as if the person who used to carry it might walk in and ask for it back. Room by the week. Something that looks at the water if you can stand it. We can stand most things when rent is involved. He slid the register at me. In town for the festival? Work. I signed my name and left room for the ghost of an alibi. Writing a piece. Travel. Human interest. Humans come with a lot of interest. The brass key chimed against the wood when he set it down. Second floor. 207, the lamp has been finicky when the weather turns. Pull the chain with patience. Anything else turns finicky. Only the ocean and the sheriff. His eyes drifted to the Chronicle tucked under my arm, then moved off like he'd thought better of it. Supper from 6. I recommend the meatloaf if you're nostalgic for school. The stairs had a limp, and the hallway wore its paint in the uneasy way of old men wearing new suits. The room was square and honest, iron bed, washstand that had seen confessions, a writing table facing a window that framed the point like a picture you only get to keep if you behave. Beyond it, the lighthouse sat quiet and white, a tall truth with nothing to say yet. I set the valise on the bed and took out the things that build a man's day. A clean shirt that would wrinkle as soon as I looked at it. A razor. A cheap camera that didn't complain. A leather notebook with tired corners. From the lining, I pulled the letter. The envelope had no return and the careful slant of someone who could practice restraint for a living. Inside, 2 sentences on thin paper. Ashford Bay keeps what the war couldn't take. If you want the truth, let the lamp judge. No signature. No date. As if the words had written themselves in the wind off the point. They'd found me in Boston like a stray dog finds the man who feeds it once. The kind of note you either ignore or marry. I'd taken a train. I was supposed to be finished with this kind of thing. Chasing after other people's damage was a habit that had made me a widower and a stranger to sleep. But habits don't break. They crack in quiet places and cut you when you reach for something else. Outside, a foghorn spoke from the mouth of the harbor, low and certain. I put the letter back in its pocket, where it could burn without showing flame, and went to the window. On the street below, a woman in a red coat crossed with her head down, the color brave in the gray. She vanished into the library like the tide slips under a dock. I washed the road off my hands and went back down. Mr. Greeley was teaching the register to behave. He looked up. Is there a bar that doesn't water its beer? Mariner's Rest, he said, which sounded like a threat or a lullaby. On Bate Street, across from the net loft. Mick keeps a decent bottle behind the not-so-decent ones. And if a man wanted to keep his head clear? He smiled with half his face. Then he'd go anyway. Outside, the fog had reached up from the wharf and put a hand on the town. The flags on the string didn't bother to pretend anymore. I followed the smell of rope and diesel and old fish along a lane that leveled out toward the water. The docks lay close together like conspirators. Nets hung like tired thoughts. A cat with the life beaten out of 8 of its 9 sleuthed between crates. The door to the Mariner's Rest was the color of old molasses and it sighed when I opened it. Inside, every chair knew somebody. The light was low enough to forgive faces. A radio somewhere tried to teach the room a song about a train and lost luck. I took a stool at the end, where a man can watch the door and not be conspicuous about it. The bartender was pushing 45 with shoulders made for lifting barrels and a grin that had arm-wrestled sorrow and learned to shake hands with it. What'll it be? Coffee, I said. Black as we can get it. He raised an eyebrow, found a clean cup, and poured. You're new. Is it hard to tell? In a place this size? You don't even have to turn around to see a stranger. He slid the cup over. Name's Mick. I keep people hydrated and polite. Sometimes in that order. Read. The coffee was hot and honest. I hear you keep better bottles in the back. Only for emergencies. Weddings, funerals, and when the socks remember how to hit. His gaze went past my shoulder and back again. You here for the festival or for the rocks? Is there a difference? Only in daylight. He wiped the bar in a slow circle. There was a man on the teeth this morning. Folks say he fell. Folks say lots. What do you say? I say the ocean only takes volunteers. He leaned his elbows and let his voice drop half an inch. You a lawman? Writer. Same thing, different badge. He nodded toward the Chronicle on the stool beside me. They'll have it wrong either way. The door dragged some fog in by the collar. A couple of fishermen shouldered through, boots tracking salt, eyes working like dogs. One of them glanced at me the way you measure a board before you saw it. I gave him the kind of smile that doesn't stick. Who's the lightkeeper? I asked. Out at the point. Old man Grady runs the tower with his boy. Grady's got hands like rope burns and a temper to match. The boy's a quiet one. Watches the lamp like it owes him money. They have visitors. Not unless you count gulls and fools. Mick's grin came back. You thinking of paying respects? Thinking of a lot of things. Well, if one of those things is supper, the rest does a plate after 5. Chowder if the pot's still standing. Bread from the bakery that thinks it's Paris. He nodded at the window where the fog pressed its face like a nosy ant. Best eat before the weather decides you shouldn't. I left a coin that said thanks in a language we both understood and went back to the street. The fog had thickened to a habit. I could feel it settling into my coat and my bones. The lighthouse was just a rumor now, a white idea behind the gray. The note in my pocket felt heavier, as if paper could grow teeth. Back at the Seaward, the lobby had a warm, red hush. Mr. Greeley watched me. Find what you were looking for, Mr. Reed? Not yet. Then you're normal. He lowered his voice like he was about to ask the time of day in a church. Sheriff Harvey might pay a call, seeing as he collects new names same as some men collect coins. I'll shine mine for him. Please do. Greeley's smile was paper-thin. He's fond of dull ones. In my room, the window was a gray sheet. Somewhere beyond it, the lamp waited for night to hand it the switch. I put the Chronicle on the table and the letter beside it and stood there longer than it made sense. The war has a way of teaching you to listen to empty rooms. They tell the truth better than crowded ones. There was a sound at the door like a throat being cleared by a gentleman who hated apologies. A slip of paper slid under the threshold. I waited. Nothing else. No footsteps in the hall. No cough. Just the patient hush of the fog. I picked it up. Library catalog stock, clipped neat. On it, a pencil mark, a simple I with a line slashed through the pupil. Underneath, a time. Midnight. The lamp at the point had not yet spoken, but the town had. And it didn't like to repeat itself.